So page templates just
This is
continuing
the airing of the grievance, apparently.
Yeah,
We're
I forgot
doing
we were airing our
Festivus
grievances.
episode today. Welcome,
It's
everyone, to December 13th episode of Ask Praxis. We have the final time for this big group of Sympraxians. It is our 86th episode and our final show for Emily, and we are sad to lose her. Moving on to great things. The rest of us are all here. And so let's move on to today's topic, which is template overview. And so we're calling this a template overview because we want to sort of talk through all the things we think of as a Sympraxis team about templating. So we're going to start off with what a template is, and then we're going to just get a high-level overview of all the things we think of as templatey in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So content types, document templates, page templates, list templates, site templates. And, we'll probably expand on this even a little bit more in future episodes, but we're going to do a light overview of everything today. So moving forward, Mr. Anderson, please describe.
As I am wont to do,
template.
I went to dictionary.com and said, what is a template?
Oh boy.
And there are actually a lot, like 10 different definitions, but I think the first one is actually sort of interesting. So it's a pattern or mold, something that you use to create more of a similar thing, right? Or you use it as a guide, you use it as something that you set up once and then repeatedly use. Same thing in the second thing. So usually it's something that you set up once and then reuse many, many times. Not a surprise, right? We all sort of knew that. But there are some things about the way templating works, especially in the SharePoint Microsoft 365 world. Next slide.
Can we go here?
Please.
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That might be a little different than what some people think. Not, I mean, if you've been using these kinds of templates before, you probably are well aware of this stuff. But starting in this context, templates are a starting point, and they usually aren't applied after you create that initial thing. So, if you were using a physical world template to make a pewter mug, you would use it to make the pewter mug, and then you're done, right? You can't reapply that template to the pewter mug because you already have the pewter mug. There are instances where we can reapply templates, and we'll talk about those when we're talking about the different kinds of templates. But why would you use one in a technology sense? Well, you want to provide something that's repeatable. I want to create project sites that look like this. I want to always have my contracts look like that. And I don't want to have to sort of create them on the fly each time I do that thing. That gives me consistency. Consistency is very good, especially when you're talking about technology. You want things to work the same way every time so that everybody gets the same benefit and knows that they can recognize the thing that they saw someplace else before. It's consistent every time they use it. And then it's also a way to encapsulate your institutional knowledge. So this is the way we think about a project site. This is what we've learned works best in a project site. This is what we know that we need to collect for metadata on that contract so that we can put it through a process. People don't always think about it from that perspective, but from one of the reasons that one's important is that templates should evolve over time. You shouldn't just create a template for that pewter mug and then that's it. Your pewter mugs are going to look the same every time. You want to think about, well, what have we learned about making or running projects, or what have we learned about processing contracts? And that improves over time. May not change drastically, but you may tweak things as you go. Then that last point at the bottom, there's no connection to the template that you've used. In other words, unless you do something special, once you apply that template in the beginning, and then you're free to diverge from there. There's no connection to the template in that if you add something to the template, it automatically then applies to the object that you've used to create that template.
So you're
Okay.
saying if we change our pewter mug template, that all existing pewter mugs won't automatically have a second handle, or
That would be
anything
really,
like that?
really cool. And I think there's a great science fiction book in there. So go to Kevin.
I'll get on ChatGPT. We'll have it cranked out this afternoon.
I think that's often like a sometimes you want it to and sometimes you don't want it to thing. So we'll definitely talk about that more. All right, let's move on to content types as templates.
So we use content types. I didn't realize it had a build.
You did a bad thing.
I'm sorry.
I believe I have said this is not okay.
Yeah, I know.
Mr.
And
I
right
know.
before
I'm
Christmas too. Like
I'm a
that's just
horrible, horrible
bad
person.
timing.
Now
But
you're
there's
getting
red
cold.
and green. There's red and green and no
Well
coal.
done.
So content types are a form of template in they're the way we think of a business object. They're the way we think of, I said contract already, but invoices, status updates, facility capabilities, orders, however we think about the objects that matter most to us in our daily work. That's a way that we're instantiating them, and we're getting a consistent way to think about what that object is, what metadata it needs to have, what it's called, right? Even just getting the vocabulary the same is part of templating, right? It's a pewter mug. It's not a mug that looks like it's made out of metal. That we have a name for it. We're always building on top of things that already exist in SharePoint. In this case, we're enhancing the content types that Microsoft gives us to represent the way we think of those business objects instead of the sort of the basic objects that they give us. And then if we create and store that information architecture, the definition of those content types and the content and in the site columns at the enterprise level in the content type hub or in the SharePoint Admin Center, depending on how you look at it, then we can reuse those objects. So we can reuse those content types, which are like templates across the tenant. So create them once, use them many, many places, maybe enhance them as you go forward, tweak them to make sure that you're using that enterprise learned knowledge as you're going forward.
Absolutely.
This was one of those things. Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to say, and so this kind of stuff is very much like business analyst sort of thing, templates and all that. But for admins, when I'm asked, especially when content types first showed up, this was the way that I dumbed it down for folks. And it's mostly because that was the way it had to be dumbed down for me as an admin to understand it, is when I would try to wedge people, and they're like, what are these content types? So I'm like, think of them as templates, but not right, you can templates with all this extra stuff, but it's like a type of template, and that really was the best way I could get people to start to understand them and use them. So I like that I'm not the only one that does that.
Yeah, it's absolutely that institutional knowledge piece of what is a template, where we're saying, like as somebody coming in, you can just look at the metadata associated with a contract and understand something about how this organization thinks of contracts just based on the metadata that they have for it and or the document template that they have applied to it. And so on that note, let's move forward to document templates as templates. Oh, Emily, you had something. Sorry, do you want me to go back?
Yeah, quick hit on the content types as templates this is one of the areas where we do get our double-handled pewter mugs because we have that inheritance of adding the site columns or if we're using that content type hub. So just wanted to flag that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
We used to think pewter mugs only needed one handle, but we realized 2 handles is actually better.
Well, it might be a heavy pewter mug because pewter is heavy,
Doesn't it?
right?
Doesn't it then become a chalice or something like a cup
Or a
point.
trophy?
A grail.
Yeah, it become a grail.
Okay, document templates. Okay, so what I have to say about document, I mean, we all have, I think, probably understand basically that document templates are the Office Suite way to create a template for the various Office Suite applications. So Excel templates and Word templates and PowerPoint templates. And we probably all use them. Where power can come in is when you take the document template and you marry it to a content type. And that marriage can be a marriage made in heaven, where you can essentially have your document library where you have your new button and you say, I need a new one of these. And so that new one of these, like in my little tiny screenshot here, like a crane checklist or a modular contract, can be not only the content type in its metadata, but also a template for creating the document that goes with that thing. And I think that is one of the most powerful things that we've had in SharePoint history as far as helping organizations where they have sort of a project or a container of work that they do repeatedly for multiple iterations. And so when each one happens, you have those templates right there handy for you. Unfortunately, some things have changed with modern, and at this point, if you are using the content type hub and you want to use document templates, all your document templates have to live in a library in the content type hub. I would, if I had animation, I would put a huge red like X over the top of this, because this is so frustrating to me. Because one of the other things that we have out of modern SharePoint sites is the ability to have an organization assets library where we can put our document templates in an org assets library. And then when the user is using the desktop app or the online app for Word or Excel or PowerPoint, there's from my organization of templates, and the templates then come from that library, are up to date with whatever the most recent template version is in that library, and can be used right from the app. That is super powerful. Why would you not want that org assets library to be married to your content types? So you could do it both ways and you'd have the same one source of truth. This methodology does not support that.
Sorry, it just occurred to me. We could put an org assets library in the content type hub, give everybody access to it.
You can, but it's really unfortunate.
Not optimal,
and
but yes.
I'm going to go one step further and tell you that if you look under the covers at what is happening, so we have some new endpoints for provisioning. We have, so these are both available in Microsoft Graph. One is called Get Compatible Hub Content Types. That's just basically to say, for this list or library, give me the content types that I can put here. So list ones are list ones, library ones are library ones. There's then this new endpoint called Add Copy from Content Type Hub. That endpoint, what it does is it syncs the content type down to that site. So it does the pull to get that content type into that new site. But it also, if it is associated with a document template, makes a copy of the document template and puts it in that site, so that that template is sort of separated from the content type. And so if you change the content type in the assets library, you have to know that you then have to go into the content type and republish it, so that that new copy of the template gets copied all around to all the places where the thing is. It used to work with a relative URL. I really wish it still worked with the relative URL, in that I would maybe put my content type assets library in maybe the home site or somewhere where I knew that everyone would have access to it. And then I would use a site relative URL to reference my template in that location. Then when you create the content type into a new site, because you've inherited it from it, it would still pull it from that relative URL, from the site relative URL. And that would be the best scenario. That's how it always used to work. Now, caveat here, if you try to do it that way, the new experience in online is broken. However, if you change your document library so that documents automatically open in the desktop experience and not the online experience, the relative URL still works. Also, if you put in any macro enabled templates, the new button when you're in online says, oh, this has a macro in it. My online Office apps do not support macros. It drops you into the desktop experience, and guess what? The template still works. This relative URL template in the content type still works. So this is, in my opinion, completely my opinion, because I think people disagree with me that are in charge of this feature, which says that it's out of the box, but in my opinion, this is now broken, a broken experience. So that is what I have to say about document templates. Not super happy where we landed, but at least knowing helps us make good decisions. Yes, I think probably a workaround is to put the org assets in the content type hub. I just really, really do not like that, especially because nowadays we theoretically aren't going to the content type hub to manage our content types. We're doing it from the admin center, and that's where they want you to be doing it. So to bury your org assets library in the content type hub seems ill-advised. So
yeah, I would also argue that maybe the people managing those templates wouldn't be somebody that we want in the content type hub or in the admin center.
That was my argument as well.
And I feel like it's pushing all of the templates towards that centralized management as well. And the whole point is distributed content management. So now if we're putting them all in the same library, yes, maybe there's a legal template we need to use, but should legal have access to the marketing PowerPoint template at the same time? So 100%. I think that's where I start to get really concerned because people overwrite so easily.
Yep. All of those things are things that, yes, it could be done, but it still doesn't feel right. And I just want to go back to what we had, which was right since, before 2013. So, okay.
Kids today, they don't remember the good old days.
Speaking of things that changed that we don't really like, page templates. So page templates just continuing.
This is the airing of the grievance, apparently.
Yeah,
We're
I forgot
doing
we were airing our grievances.
Episode today. It's Festivus.
Yeah, the Misfit toys.
Yeah, carry on.
So going up our scale, right, we're talking about different levels of templating. So now we have a page within a site. When we do page templates, they are only in that site collection. They're very helpful if you have the same type of content you're always sharing from that site. Most often I see that with news templates. Speaking of news templates, we now have that full page news that we get to email to someone. So Microsoft decided that that's what we always want to do. And they now default any news post to this made for email template section. Now, if you're not paying attention, you see the word blank because you're reading on the web, only first few characters, click it, go into my next page, and I start to put content in there. And I think, where are all my web parts? You don't get all of the web parts with these news templates that are made for email. All the sites are automatically defaulting to that one. So if you're going to make a news page and you want all of your web parts because you're not sending it as that full page preview, then go with the standard below. You can click those ellipses and change the default off of the ones made for email. I'm just going to also flag here the other thing I don't like about the shift of this made for email page templates is anytime now when you post news, when you hit post, it brings up the email dialogue for you to send it out. So, and it's not very clear that your news was posted and you don't also have to do this step. So I think there's a lot of confusion in this area with the shift in the made for email news template. So make sure to connect with your users on that too.
Yeah, this is, Festivus.
Two thumbs down.
Yeah. Okay, continuing on. Automating page templates. Well, people, friends, you've heard me say it before. I'll say it again. There is still no official Pages API. Ergo.
Didn't they promise us one? Didn't they say this was going to happen?
Yes, and I keep hearing things.
So they keep saying too. They're consistent.
They're consistently saying it's going to happen. So yes, there is a way to automate page templates, but it is nothing official. So we have all the PMP resources that have the reverse engineered APIs for doing this. So PMP PowerShell, the Microsoft 365 CLI, which is better than PowerShell, Todd. The PNP framework, which is our templating, is our PMP provisioning framework. I said it just to get a rise out of him. And then, of course, PMP.js, near and dear to my heart. We all have APIs for creating pages and putting web parts on them. And then as part of that as well, there's some third-party tools, two that I know of off the top of my head, Orchestrate and ShareGate, support using this sort of reverse engineered way to create pages. So we do have that kind of automating, but there is no official automation for pages. Okay, moving the forward.
I just want to say it's been a rough week for me for my PowerShell proselytizing. I was on a Microsoft call yesterday and they were going over some Azure Communication Services stuff and they're showing this, that, and the other. And they're like, you can do it with this, you can do it with this, you can do it with the CLI. I'm like, no PowerShell? He's like I said, you can do it with the CLI. And he just kept right on going. I'm like,
oh, that's funny.
and then this.
Well, you know, list templates, Derek.
Yes. All right. So list templates generally serve two main purposes, and it's not the first being more of a quick start for common things that you may only do once or twice. You don't really want to invest the time in setting up the infrastructure. It's more of a point and click approach. You can use that for asset tracking or maybe an employee onboarding checklist. The thing about those is that Microsoft provides us with a bunch of pre-built templates. It lets users get started really quickly without having to think of all those important things like site columns and content types. That actually is a big problem with those, and I'll get to that in a second. The second way is really about providing consistency. And as Mark said earlier, consistency, governance, understanding what something looks like, whatever that thing is. It lets us create the same list the same way across multiple sites. And back in the old days, we used to have the ability to take a list, save it as template. There was a gallery. You could just sort of go in and do your own thing and routinely be able to add those as a template. One of the ways that we would do this, you could do this as, say, a policy library, like you had a specific document library or a specific list dedicated to that, or maybe project task tracking or workflow items, those kinds of things. And it lets you set up the list exactly the way you want it, and with all the appropriate site columns for your organization, and make sure that it's replicated properly every single time. You can also use those with those tools like Orchestry or the CLI, because then you can programmatically instantiate the list using that template. So from this, you can include the site columns and the content types if you want to use the content type gallery. This is very useful when you want to do something that creates a roll-up. So say you've got a different project work list in each project site and you've got 100 project sites. You can use this to then create a roll-up using PnP search, because you're using content type IDs that are all the same because you're stamping it out using the template. Now, Microsoft provides us with a whole bunch of templates. Most of them fall in that quick start category, that first item. Some of them even come with their own approval processes via Power Automate. There's a travel and expense and a content scheduler. These are great for organizations that just really want to get started, really that like 100 level or less. We don't tend to use these in our work because we're creating lists or list templates that are very specific to the guidance that we put out there, which is to manage your site columns and content types at the highest level. One thing to note about the Microsoft list template, so any of the ones you see when you click Make New, all of those use list level site columns and content types, which means that if you use the project work tracker and you instantiate that manually across 1 to 5 sites, and then you want to add something to it, that doesn't automatically get added like it would if you were using the content type gallery. Now, Microsoft provides theirs. You can also create your own organizational templates for lists. And this works in both Microsoft Lists app as well as SharePoint. And you can do that by generating JSON and using PowerShell to instantiate it.
Well done. That's why I like you more.
Why were you saying nice things to Todd?
I didn't say I liked PowerShell.
Oh,
I just said you could do it.
You could do it. Yeah, right. Okay. I feel better now.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on from list templates to site templates. Mark, join us in Festivus.
Well, there's something I want to say about these site templates. So they've offered sort of two site templates historically, well, recent history, a team site and a communication site. These templates now pop up when you make one of those selections, and they are sort of pre-configured sites that have a homepage that's configured a certain way. And in some cases, I believe there are some lists and libraries that get provisioned as well. The reason we actually decided to do this session was because of a weird thing that they decided to do, which is they now give each homepage in each one of those templates a different name. So rather than us expecting that the home page is always going to be home.aspx, each one of these templates has a different name, and that's that blog post at the bottom. So again, these are the way Microsoft thinks about doing these particular things. So event planning is a Microsoft way of looking at how would you go about managing a particular event or an employee onboarding team. It may or may not have anything to do with the way you think about doing things, but they can be quick starts or sort of some of the same stuff that Derek was explaining about list templates. They may also be something that you can instantiate and then use for a way to generate ideas about how you would really want to build your, crisis communication team. One of the things that we also see in both list templates and site templates is that they aren't necessarily built with sort of enterprise use in mind, like Derek was talking about. You don't have a content type in those list templates. You don't have the same kinds of things in these site templates. So if you ended up creating a whole bunch of event planning sites, they sort of would be each sort of a content island that don't have any connection to each other than the fact that they use those templates. But they're really good for quick and consistent generation of those particular kinds of sites. So we tend to think about in many ways using site templates more as building blocks for the things that you want to add to sites over time even. So for example, you might decide you need a policies library in your site, and you may need a bunch of site columns, and you might like a set of content types. So you could have separate site templates that do each of those instantiations. And so rather than applying one sort of large pre-configured site template, you apply a number of different site templates that add additional features or functionality to your site as time goes by. We'll talk more about that in a future session.
Oh, we don't have time for this.
I was just going to say, when we practiced this on Monday, they were like, oh, we'll blow through all that stuff and you can use the rest of the time to talk about all the stuff you can do in PowerShell.
And that's what we're giving you.
Go.
Yeah, so basically for this slide, I wanted to spell out all the things that you can do with templates you can automate with PowerShell if you want to. In a lot of places, there's better ways to do it that make more sense, but if for whatever reason you're building on something you're already doing in PowerShell, you can do it. And also, I just wanted an excuse to use that picture, that meme down there. If you want to see what's out there, that get command thing that I've got in there will show you all of the commandlets that deal with this and sort them by noun type. And so I did that, number one, to show off being able to sort by nouns, because I'm pretty proud of that. But then you can see, like, if you want to do list templates, all the list template commandlets will be in one block. Or if you want to do site templates or site scripts, those will all be in one block. So it lets you kind of figure out what you're going to do. The Microsoft PowerShell module also does some of this, but it does it worse and it's inferior in every way. So don't worry about it. Just use the PNP PowerShell module.
Inferior in every way. I like that.
Every measurable
every way. Some resources for you I'm sharing, so you should be able to click on those if you are interested in any of those quick little hits there. But wrapping up, this is our last Ask and Praxis for the year. We're waving goodbye to Emily as well as she moves on to bigger and better things. Our next episode will be January 10th, content types and document templates. So we're going to dive a little deeper into those two things that we talked about already. Go visit Emily. She's going to be with Microsoft 365 Community Days in Miami. She's running that event. That's going to be February 2nd. Who doesn't want to go to Miami and see Emily in February?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
all of us. Also, North American Cloud and Collaboration Summit, both Emily and I will be there, and the European Collaboration Summit, which is in May, and that will be Emily, Derek, and I. So if you're interested in going over to Germany, I think it's Eric Schupps who says, it's just as cheap to get a ticket to Germany from the United States and attend the European Collaboration Summit as it is to do some of the more highly expensive ones that we have here in the US. So definitely check that out if you are interested. So thank you all. Have a wonderful holiday. No matter what holiday you celebrate, enjoy it thoroughly. And we will see you all in the new year, January 10th. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.